Hey everybody, this is Peter with Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to be taking a quick look at a short RPG from Snowbright Studio called Ink. This is a really short book, but with a really cool premise. So, a lot of us out there, we've played fantasy RPGs before, we've rolled up our characters, we've gone on adventures, and inevitably, some of those characters have met their untimely demise. They've died, and we wonder what happens to them. Have you ever wondered that? What happens to the characters that die in your game and do not return? Well, Ink takes on that idea. It places all of those previously played dead characters in a limbo place called the Ink, this dark ocean with small little islands throughout in this pitch black night. And all of those dead characters have a burden that is leaving them here stuck in limbo, leaving them stuck in the ink. And they must journey through the ink trying to fulfill or answer that burden. And in doing so, hopefully free their spirit to move on to whatever comes on next. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around. We'll talk a little bit about how the game is played, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on Ink. Now, Ink begins the game where most games do begin, and that is your character. Who are you going to be playing as? Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, the idea behind the game is that most likely you're going to be playing as a character that you've played already before in another game, but in that game they died. And so you're just grabbing a character from that previous game and you're going to have some of the stuff that you need to start. But you may also decide to play Ink with a whole brand new character, one that you didn't play in a previous game. And so character creation starts with creating the first aspect of your character, and that is their spirit. So when creating the spirit for your character, you're going to be following this first page right here. You're going to be selecting a name for the character. You're then going to determine how much of that character's prior life before dying, how much does the spirit actually remember of their life. Maybe they only remember the instant of death, or maybe they remember this one specific thing from their life, but they don't remember how they died and they don't remember how they lived before that either. So there's just maybe just one spot that they remember. Now, there's going to be the opportunity as you play the game to have your character start to remember more of their previous life. And that has to do with the next part. You're going to be determining what is the spirit's burden. What is the thing that is holding them here in ink, in this limbo between life and the afterlife? What is that thing? What is that burden? And then also you're going to be selecting three skills that they're carrying with them into the ink from their prior life. For all of this, there are rollable charts in chapter 5 of the book that will give you ideas, or you can roll on those charts, or you can work with your game master to come up with your own ideas of burdens and skills. So this is really interesting. There's not a whole lot of rolling that you have to do here. There's not the stats that you normally think of when you think of a character in a role-playing game. But that's just one aspect of the character that you'll be playing in Ink. The next part is the shadow. And for the shadow, you're going to be selecting a cause of death. What was the thing that killed your character in their prior life? Again, if you're porting over a character from another game, maybe you already know what their cause of death is. But if you don't, if you're creating a new character, then this is where you're going to go ahead and determine what is the cause of death for that character. You're also then going to be selecting the form the shadow of the character takes. So again, you're playing as a spirit and a shadow of a single character, and you need to select its form, and there's a list of forms that you can choose from here on the next few pages. You're also then going to determine the starting power for that form. Most of the forms come with multiple powers, and you get to choose one to start. And then throughout the game, as you journey through the ink, there will be the option and the possibility of evolution of these characters, of these shadows, making them stronger, emboldening them here in the ink. And then you're going to determine the starting stamina, defense, and damage done by the shadow. And again, that is because in the game, when it comes to interacting with NPCs, that's going to be the spirit's job. The spirit of the character will be doing all of that interacting. But when combat begins, when it's time to fight the lesser fiends and the greater fiends that call ink home and feed off of the spirits that roam the inky depths, then it's time for the shadow to show its true self. Now, as you continue through this opening bit, you will again see the options that you have for your shadow forms. And the book does mention here that if you come up with some other ideas for this, work with your game master and see what you can figure out to create. But each one of these forms comes with a stat block and some information about the forms themselves. I really like this very kind of dark outline art that ink uses. I think it's very creative and fitting with the idea of you just have this white and black here in the ink. So very, very interesting. But that is what you're going to be doing as you're creating your character. You'll create those two aspects, the spirit of the character and the shadow for the character. All right, next we're going to be talking about conflict. So when it comes to the actual act of combat with the lesser and greater fiends of the ink, it talks about violent conflict here and the fact that it takes place in rounds. And I'm going to read through this real quick because it's a little different than any of the previous combats that I've used in other RPGs. First, the Game Master is going to announce that the round is starting and ask all players to silently and confidently select an action that their shadow is going to take. So right then, from the get-go, different than any other role-playing game I've ever played, there's no rolling for initiative, choosing right away who's going to be going in what order. The Game Master wants everyone to determine what action their shadow is going to take. Then players may do this privately, writing down their action. And if players are using ink cards, which is a separate addition to this game, if you wish to, you may simply place a face down action card instead of writing down your action. At the same time, the Game Master is going to quietly select what actions the enemy will take by either writing down the action or placing multiple face down cards as well. Then all players and the Game Master reveal what actions they have selected, all at the same time. In any order, players and the Game Master select legal targets for their actions. If no legal targets exist, then the action actually just fails. So you're choosing an action and who that action is going against. And if it happens that that's not actually able to happen, it just doesn't happen. The Game Master and players resolve these actions as if they occur simultaneously. And after all actions have been resolved, any shadow or enemy that is at 0 stamina falls unconscious. The Game Master may move enemies, and then players may move their spirits, and then we go around until either all enemies are defeated or all players are defeated. So that is a very interesting way to handle combat. It's different than anything I've ever played before. And I like things that are different. It gets me thinking about why they chose to do it this way. But now that we finished talking about how combat plays out, I'm going to tell you about the next really interesting aspect of ink that I haven't mentioned until now. So this next thing is really interesting and really cool because, again, it's something that I've never really seen become a focus of a role-playing game, and that is the idea of total party kills. This is a thing that in most role-playing games where it's what the Game Master and the players all fear and dread, is that something has been imbalanced when creating a combat scenario, and all of a sudden all players die. And it can be tough. It can be hard on the Game Master as well as on the players. But ink treats this differently. There is a point to making the combats difficult, so that when players do win a combat, they gain these rewards. They gain shards, and shards are things to be held on to, so that when the combat does become too difficult, when they are all defeated, when a total party kill takes place, which it will in this game, it is meant to happen eventually, then shards can be spent to evolve your shadows into more strong characters, more formidable foes for the lesser and greater fiends that call this place home. So I think this is really, really interesting. Along the path in the ink, you're going on a journey. And along this journey, you will find places called beacons. And beacons are these little pricks of light in the fabric of the ink that can show you a little bit of what's on the other side, but they're not big enough for anyone to pass through. And these beacons are where, if your party dies in a total party kill, where they will reawaken. But before the reawakening happens, players can use the shards that their characters have accrued to then evolve their shadows into these greater, more formidable forms. Now, the idea is that you'll be traveling from key point to key point, these islands, and you will go against some of these lesser fiends as well. But eventually, everything is leading to a greater fiend, one of these bigger creatures that make home near a place called a passage beacon, a beacon that is large enough that if a spirit has fulfilled their burden, has come to terms with their burden, they will actually be able to pass through the beacon to the other side, leaving the ink forever. And that is the goal of each of the characters in this game, is to travel along the ink, interacting with the NPCs they see there, learning more about their prior life, coming to terms with the burden that is holding them here in the ink, and then eventually, hopefully, growing strong enough to defeat a greater fiend and defeat their burden and to pass on from the ink through one of these passage beacons. Now, this is really interesting. The idea that a total party kill is utilized for the betterment of the party, I think, is really, really interesting. Now, you obviously aren't meant to want your characters to die. Combat is meant to be hard, and you're meant to try to win because you need to win these rewards in the game. But at the same time, knowing that when you die, it's not the end is really interesting. I think it's empowering for the players to try to really go at it and to not be afraid of what is to come next. So I think this is really interesting. I like this idea. And this is really the crux of what is ink. It is this existential threat, this burden that holds the spirit in place, and the journeys that each of these characters are going to go through as they confront prior moments in their life, as they come to mind, and how each one of these things fits into the burden that is holding them here, making them stronger eventually so that they can overcome that burden through the constant fighting and dying and fighting and dying that they have to do here in the ink to eventually be able to defeat that burden and to move on beyond. So I'm not going to get into the rest of the rules for ink, but I wanted to give you that idea, because if that concept, just that concept, interests you, then I think that this game is something that you should definitely check out. So if you want to check it out, then you want to head over to snowbrightstudio.com and look for ink. It is, less than 100 pages long. It's about $25. And I think that this is going to be one of those games that, for the right group of people, and maybe that's your group, this could be a kind of almost a life-changing RPG. I think it's just a really cool and different, very unique idea. Everybody, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it inspires some of you to go and check out this awesome new RPG. And if you did find it helpful, go ahead and give the video a like, maybe subscribe to our channel here. You can also head over to tabletopgamingguild.com to find out a little bit more about us and the things that we are up to. But everybody, thank you so much for your time. And until we talk again, keep on playing games.